Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. And today we're going to be discussing the newest film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Strange. We were lucky enough to see this on opening night as well, and we just want to give our thoughts and feelings on it. Now, we're going to post this now, just in case you haven't seen it already. This discussion will be spoiler heavy. We will be discussing this film in great detail, no holds bar. We'll be talking about everything. Right?
Excellent.
Right. So, the first thing that I noticed is, the first thing I read about this film actually as it was nearing up review time was that it got a few comparisons to the first Iron Man.
I've seen this as well.
Yeah, not just in terms of quality or feel, but as in it's that kind of origin story. And Stephen Strange is that kind of character because he's quite a dick.
Essentially, you have the same sort of nuances in the character. He's very materialistic. He thinks of himself very highly. He's very good in his specialist field. And you also have within the story of how to learn the powers, how to get good with your powers. Obviously, Iron Man is the suit, so you can draw differences from that. But essentially, you have the same origin bit. But at least in Doctor Strange, it was confined to a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, because that's another thing I noticed as well, just for the sake of comparing it to Iron Man, is that it took a decent amount of time for him to fully become Iron Man, not including when he had the giant robotic suit to start off with. The film spent a little bit more time him perfecting the suit and perfecting the thrusters. This film really does not wait to get to the meat of the story. He doesn't wait for him at all to have his hands broken, and I think within 20 minutes of the film, he's currently looking for the Ancient One.
Yeah, he's in almost in Carthage at that point.
Yeah, it really doesn't waste time. So I was quite happy about that, to be honest, because it's another origin story, and I hate it when they just sort of plod around the beginning a bit too much.
It's not a very interesting origin story up until when he gets to Nepal. It's a car crash, it's surgery, but then at least we get into the Doctor Strange main parts of it, the magical parts. Another thing on the origin story is that the direction I thought was really good. Not only did they keep it confined to that sort of half an hour mark, but also when he's learning his powers, because it's such a short period of time, you don't expect him to become a master as such in the arts of Doctor Strange. And the direction really helped in that it didn't show him exclusively learning it. It showed the sort of response of the Ancient One and Mordo of that. So you didn't automatically look at him doing his spells straight away and thinking, well, that's a bit unrealistic. He's learned that within half an hour of the film. But you could tell from the reaction of the Ancient One and Mordo that he'd been there a few months, if not a year. I think the director said that the training for the Doctor within the sequence was a whole year, and you could really tell that from the reactions of the other characters.
One thing I like as well is that they say he's got potential, but I feel like throughout a lot of the film, he's not that good a sorcerer.
No. There's a part where he's fighting what's his name, Caecilius, and he's the first time he has this circular shield on his hands.
Yeah.
And when he gets ready for Caecilius' attack, one actually fails.
Yeah.
So he only has one ready to fight Caecilius in his henchmen, which is again a good sign of his progression going forward.
I also want to talk about the casting as well. I was a bit sceptical at first because it seemed as one of those, we have a popular actor, let's bang him in a comic film.
I think this story was though that someone from Marvel pitched it to him. I think a director or something, and this was a long time ago. Just talking about characters in the MCU that could come about, and he just said you'd make a really good Doctor Strange, and he had no idea who it was. Even went home and looked it up and just didn't think much of it. But now coming to it, and especially when he was trying on the suit for the first time, and he had this sort of superhero moment, and he was just going wow. And the costume designer actually went to him. I've seen that face before. Everybody who's come in here has to be a Marvel superhero and tried on the costume for the first time had that exact face.
Also important as well because he's not a popular character. He's a very important character. Because as we're gonna get onto the later films, I think he's gonna fulfill a very big role.
Yeah, I know you haven't read the Infinity Gauntlet, but he is crucial. Him and Adam Warlock in there are crucial.
Yeah.
In the resolution of that.
One thing I like as well is that from the limited reading I've done of graphic novels is that he's a very stoic person, which you do see a little bit towards the end because he's obviously going to have that sort of snarky thing because the Doctor Strange in the comics is quite a proper, quite an astute person. But as it's an origin story, you can get away with having a bit of a snarky attitude, having him make a joke. Speaking of jokes, let's get to the humour of this film.
It was funny in places. I thought that it wasn't very well blended into the dialogue. It was always have a normal bit of dialogue and put a joke on the end. It was never sort of a comedy that flowed through the film, really.
Yeah, there's one point of contention as well, is that he thinks he's hilarious, but it's immediately pointed out, I think it's within the first 5 minutes of the film, that he thinks he's hilarious, but nobody else does. Now, quite a bit of the humour is him, and him deliberately trying to make those smart jokes. A few of them fall flat, in my opinion. Now, I don't know whether this is trying to tie back to he thinks he's hilarious and no one gets it. That's the joke.
I think it probably is, but
yeah,
and obviously if it isn't, then that's a big risk to take. So I think it probably does suit his character.
Yeah, he's not the most hilarious character. Once again, another Iron Man parallel. A lot of other characters are funnier than him, but this isn't a film that you go and see for the humour value. This is something you go to see for something a bit different.
Well, the effects are incredible. What they extract from the original Doctor Strange comic books and put onto the screen is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't really hit home until, well, the first bit is when the Ancient One shows him the other universes in the astral plane, and you just get thrown for an absolute... I mean, it's the most impressive special effects I've seen in years.
In a Marvel film.
In a Marvel film, hands down. I know in our retrospective we praised the special effects on a few films, but this one sets it up to here.
I think it's the imagination that goes into it as well. I mean, it's all well and good having explosions and things in Iron Man, that's special effects, but they've taken ideas from what Steve Ditko, especially in the Dark universe that he did in the original comics, extracted that, put their own take on it, and then put it into this amazing sequence.
It's some of the action scenes, some of the fight scenes, not just the choreography of it, but a lot of the film centers around the changing of the landscape, as you might have seen in posters. And the first parallel I wanted to draw was, it's like Inception when the streets bend over. This absolutely destroys that.
It's much more, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. The amount of moving parts, the amount of moving backgrounds is worth just sitting and watching for those parts alone. You know, it feels like the entire world and universe is being bent around these few people, which I can't praise this film enough. I've even said to a couple of friends that you should go see this film, not only because it's a great film, but you should see it for the special effects, because good God, this will put you through a loop. And that's one of the things I wanted. I think they could have gone a little bit... This is the problem with an origin story. They could have gone a little bit weirder, because a lot of the time they rely on the mirror dimension, which is fine, it's perfectly acceptable, but that sort of just means that you're seeing the regular world just a little bit flipped.
Yeah, that is true.
A little bit distorted. I was hoping they'd go a little bit more into the other dimensions and trying to see how weird we can take it.
I suppose you can't expose a novice audience to too much too soon.
Yeah, I think the directors were told they had a few other weirder ideas, like exploring the other dimensions, and the higher-ups at Marvel said, that's all good, it's just that you might want to save it for a sequel.
I suppose that goes back to the Edgar Wright version of Ant-Man, where he wanted to try something different, and then that didn't quite fit with the formula, and therefore it doesn't work with Marvel.
How do you want to talk about this formula? Because I think that... Another thing I read, I don't tend to read reviews for films I know for a fact I'm going to go see, but the first batch of reviews I read for this were, it's good, it's a little bit formulaic. To be honest, I was expecting that. But I think the formula is twisted just enough in this.
Yeah, I didn't think the third act was too explosive, as you normally expect. And they did that well. I mean, the end scene was the opposite of the action scene. Like, it repaired everything. So.
Yeah, because as we said before, you know, you get a good amount of character development, and then it all stops until the fight's over.
Yeah.
But this one actually carried all the way through. The final fight against Dormammu, I loved it. I was really, really happy it wasn't just a glorified fist fight.
Yeah, it would have been a bit strange for him, because...
A bit strange?
the only offensive powers that he really had were the whip.
Yeah.
And then, to some extent, the cape. And the time change.
Yeah.
Which you can't really say is that offensive. So to use his mind is a much more realistic take.
Yeah, because it's another realm who's out... Did he say he's outside of the laws of life and death or something? Because it's something to do with the rules of the Dark Dimension.
I think when he uses the the time gem.
Yeah.
And obviously that has its own set of powers that he can use and protect himself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how he got into the infinite loop with
Yeah,
Dormammu at the end.
I really love that he actually thought of such a creative solution, because he knows for a fact he's not strong enough to.
I think the Ancient One initially put the idea in his head at the beginning, because or one of the people in the sanctum, because when he was messing with the Eye of
Agamotto.
yeah, and they said that this is a possibility, so you don't want to do too much with it. So he knew that it was possible, and then put that into practice.
What do we think of the supporting cast?
I wasn't too impressed. From what I've read, people are critical of Caecilius, Mordo, and Christine Miller, which is, I think is Christine Palmer, which is Rachel McAdams' character. Their screen time is quite minimal.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sort of bored of seeing, especially Marvel films, a really diluted love interest, which is pretty much what Rachel McAdams' character was. And an alternative, a really easy alternative for me. I mean, obviously, you talk to Marvel execs and that's not going to be the case, but an easy alternative for me is to use what they did in Doctor Strange The Oath, which is to put Night Nurse in place of Rachel McAdams' character, or from what we saw in Daredevil, from the TV series, put her in the movies, and then in the sequence when he's having surgery, and he goes into his astral form and scares Christine Palmer.
Yeah.
It would be good to have Night Nurse there, because obviously she can perform those sorts of procedures, and it fits in. I think it develops her character better rather than introducing someone who is very forgettable. Yeah,
that's another thing I want to point out, is that a character is. You can argue that the character's a bit diluted, but I think that because they're exes to each other, you can argue why that relationship is there. Fun note about Mordo as well. I read this earlier this morning, is that Mordo is another archenemy of Strange in the comic book lore. He is he trains under him and the Ancient One, similar strangers, but in the comics he tries to kill the Ancient One and gets banished, and that's how he becomes an enemy. So they had to try and work around that, and I like that they brought morals into it, but he seemed to go off the deep end very quickly. I know that the Ancient One sort of alluded to it by saying, "Oh, he's too rooted in the traditional values."
I imagine that's something that was needed to be done before the film was even made. They knew the direction they were going to go with it, and they knew that in the next film perhaps that this is going to be the main villain. They've also resolved a really important issue within the whole MCU, in that the Vision and Doctor Strange both have Infinity Gems. The Vision has the Mind Stone, and Doctor Strange has the Time Stone, and so having those, their power just elevates significantly. And this really showed in Civil War, where I thought the Vision was slightly lost in that he could have easily resolved whatever issues they were having, because he's simply is so powerful having that Infinity Gem with him. But now that we know that obviously both the gems get taken off them to go into the gauntlet, that brings them back down a level and allows them to have more interactions with your sort of earthbound heroes.
Yeah, it brings the power level down to sort of the Civil War level, where not everyone is massively OP. It'll be interesting to see how Thor and Hulk get into that, because obviously their powers aren't tied to gems at all.
I think that's partly why they didn't include Thor as much in Civil War, because it's quite easy to resolve.
Yeah, whoever would end, it's the precise reason, because whichever side they were on would win. But also, fun little note, even though he didn't voice him, Benedict Cumberbatch did the motion capture for Dormammu.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's nice seeing him putting that sort of use he had in The Hobbit to use again.
That was a cool villain as well. As the villain goes, Caecilius was nice in the close hand combat, sort of, dialogue towards Doctor Strange in confined spaces, but Dormammu was much more threatening and much more of a match for Doctor Strange in terms of his intellect.
So, with the other post-credit scene is that we've obviously got Mordo going over and taking the powers of other magicians who just chose to take the powers and leave.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we've almost been guaranteed a sequel.
Yes.
Almost. Which is interesting because up to this point, I don't think any of the films have directly confirmed a sequel for themselves.
There's no Phase 4 as far as I know. So I imagine Phase 4 come after the second... as it's called now, the Untitled Avengers sequel to the Infinity War. So I imagine Phase 4 come after that. So, but none of them have been announced yet.
At that point, they're going to have so many cast members. It's
Yeah,
just
I think that's like 2020 or 2019 or something. So yeah.
yeah, we've got a long way until we get to the Phase 3
Yeah.
retrospective. The last thing I want to discuss quickly is just how do you think the action sequences went? Because obviously it's not that action heavy. I'd actually say this is one of the more dialogue heavy films they've put out.
The martial arts parts were really impressive. I thought they were very clean. Sort of not quite Daredevil martial arts, but still very good.
Yeah, they're using it creatively as well. It was interesting seeing. I don't know how they're able to manifest a weapon.
Yeah.
At the thing, so I wondered why Doctor Strange's was a whip, but it was quite effective seeing him use a whip defensively.
In the first action sequence where the Ancient One is fighting Caecilius in London, I think it is, that's what she uses. So I think he's learnt that off her.
Okay.
And therefore,
Yeah. The only thing I'd say about this film is that I wished it was a little bit more weirder. I wish they'd gone a little bit further. You know, maybe not use the mirror dimension as much. Maybe gone a bit more into the astral plane, because that was one of the highlights.
that was cool.
That was a really cool highlight for me.
There was one small fight scene when Strange, when he was having surgery, I think, and he was in astral form fighting someone. So that was quite cool.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Wish they'd done a little bit more with the stranger sides of things, but to be honest, I can't really think of that many criticisms for this. I mean, it's already done pretty well in terms of critically. This has been really, really well received.
For the risk that it was, this is one of the, apart from Guardians, this is one of the first times that they've really gone into not only the outer space but the multiple dimensions.
I can't remember if it was Kevin Feige or another director which says this, but this is the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. How you want to take that is your own interpretation.
It opens up so many more phases of films. It's quite scary.
Phase 10, Phase 11. Let's do the 1066 universe. Let's make Spider-Verse happen, please. That's one of my favourite plot lines, favourite stories, because it's so daft.
Get me movies of Spider-Man.
I want them to try and reintegrate the 1960s Spider-Man into the MCU. I don't care how it happens. I don't care if it's just the new Spider-Man sat behind a desk. That's all.
Who knows? We could have two Spider-Men. That happens in the comics.
Just don't redo the Clone Saga, for God's sake. So, I think based on, if you've watched the other Marvel Cinematic films before, you're gonna like it. You know,
there's no doubt. Yeah.
I think this appeals more to the fans of, like, if you liked Thor, if you liked Iron Man, if you liked having a central character who's quite flawed, and if you liked sort of the more mystical and otherworldly elements of Thor, you're really going to get a kick.
If you're a fan of Guardians, this is a really good follow-up to that, because it takes the risks that did, but in a different sense. So that worked with humour and worked with the outer space aspect of it. This takes it on to a new level.
Yeah, I just say that, following on from Guardians, don't expect this film to be as funny or as consistently funny as Guardians is. This is not the funniest film ever, but I think the overall casting, the fight scenes, unbelievable special effects really pull this film through. It sounds like we're shortlisting it in a way, but it's overall very coherent as well. I honestly can't find that many faults to this. I'm quite happy with saying that I think this is as good as Captain America Civil War. While we're in Phase 3 at the moment.
It's definitely highly recommended, and I think you can sell it based on the special effects alone.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing I point out.
And it's not even an action film, because normally when you say that, you're talking about like a Pacific Rim or something like that, but this doesn't have those sort of scenes in there. As you said, it's more dialogue heavy, so to sell it on that is quite something, I think.
Yeah, I like that they used special effects not in the Iron Man sense where it's a lot of robots or ridiculously dynamic details. They used it in a creative manner as well. They also dropped a little bit hint of like the psychedelic aspect of it, which is pretty cool.
Especially in that like trippy sequence when the Ancient One sort of grabs him and sends him on that weird thing with the hands growing out of the hands and
and he doesn't he travel through all those things before he even falls over?
Yeah.
I loved it. I love this film. Go watch it. I want more films like this. That's it. I really enjoyed this film. I would recommend anyone to see it. That's all I have to say.
Thanks for watching today. Comment in the box below, see if you have any more opinions, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.